Hello, I'm Andrew, and welcome to ESL English Practice with Traveller's Guide. These lessons are designed to help you improve your score no matter which English proficiency test you're taking. Remember to press the thumbs up if you like the video, subscribe to the channel for more videos like this, leave a comment below if you want to, and switch on the subtitles to help you understand the video. In this video, we are going to look at writing a letter. Letter writing is a common question type in English proficiency tests, especially if you're doing the IELTS General Training module. Writing a letter is often the question in writing task 1. However, this can also be a question format in other English tests. The IELTS writing test is judged on 4 criteria: task response or task achievement, coherence and cohesion, lexical resource, and grammatical range and accuracy. For task response, you need to make sure you answer the question, that you answer every part of the question, and that your writing takes the form that it's supposed to. Coherence and cohesion means everything must be in a sensible order, so that one idea flows into the next. Lexical resource is another way of saying vocabulary, so try to use some high-level difficult words, make sure you use them properly. And finally, grammatical range and accuracy concerns sentence structure, verb tenses, and using the correct forms of words. Spelling and punctuation are also important, as is handwriting unless you're doing the computer-based test. For task 1, you should spend about 20 minutes preparing your answer. I would advise that you spend the first 5 minutes planning your essay, then 10 minutes writing, and the final 5 minutes editing. In the planning stage, you should read the question very carefully. Make sure you understand exactly what you are being asked to do. If there's any vocabulary that you don't understand, try to work out the meaning from the context. You can make short notes as you prepare, and believe me, planning is not a waste of time. You can write much quicker if you have planned beforehand. Next, spend 10 minutes actually writing. 10 minutes should be long enough to get enough words onto the page. And leave 5 minutes at the end of your time for editing. This means checking your writing, read what you have written, find mistakes and correct them. Everyone makes mistakes, but if you can find those mistakes and fix them, you can achieve a higher score. I have prepared a question for us to look at, so let's see that now. Here is our writing task 1 sample question for the General Training module. Before we look at the question itself, there are some important instructions to look at. It will always say you should spend about 20 minutes on this task. And it's very important you don't spend too long on this task, because you need to have enough time to complete task 2. We also have the phrase, write at least 150 words. At least means no fewer than. So you could write 150 words, or 160 words, or 200 words, or 1,000 words. That's all okay, but do not write less than 150 words. You will definitely lose marks if you don't reach the minimum word count. And in letter writing tasks, it will often say you do not need to write any addresses. So even though we're writing a letter and it should look like a letter, it doesn't need to be an overly formal business letter. You should not write your own personal details, such as your address, on the letter. Okay, let's look at the question. Recently, while travelling for business, you stayed in a hotel which you had booked based on positive online reviews. However, your stay was far from perfect and you encountered several problems. Write a complaint letter to the hotel manager. In your letter, you should state your reason for writing the letter, describe your experience and the problems you faced, and explain what you want the hotel manager to do next. So perhaps the most important word in the question, letter. This tells us the format of the writing that we need to do. We need to write a letter. But more specifically, a complaint letter. A complaint. So there has been a problem, we want to complain about it. The first part of the question gives us some background on what happened. while the second part tells us what we need to do in our writing task. So now let's think about our writing. And in order to get a good score in task response, we need to make sure that our writing looks like a letter. So how can we make it look like a letter? Well, first of all, if we're writing a letter, we should put a date in the top right-hand corner. The date can take whatever format you're most comfortable with. I've gone with 1st June 2020. In a business letter, you would put your address on the top right-hand corner, but for this writing task, we don't need to do that. Next, we need to think about who we're writing to. If we go back to the question, we can see that we are writing to the hotel manager. One important thing to mention here, don't assume that the boss, the manager, or the principal is male. To some people that might sound obvious, but I've seen many people at this stage just address their letter to a man. But of course, the manager of the hotel could be male or female. So on the line below the date, on the left-hand side, I'm going to write Dear Sir / Madam. You should always begin your letter with dear, followed by the name of the person you are writing to. In my case, we don't know who the person is, so we'll write Dear Sir / Madam. You might write Dear Mr. Smith, if you know the name of the person you're writing to, or Dear Robin, if you're writing to a friend, or perhaps Dear Principal, using the person's job title. So I suppose in this letter I could write Dear Hotel Manager or Dear Manager, but I'm going to go with Dear Sir / Madam, as I think that is more suitable. Below this I would write the main body of the letter, and then to finish, to make it look like a letter, I'm going to sign off with Yours sincerely, and then my full name, given name and family name. I've written Andrew Traveller. This is not my real name. You don't have to use your real name for the writing test, but to make it look more formal, I've used a first name and a last name. So if anyone was to look at this writing, they would know immediately that I have written a letter. Therefore, that particular part of the task response has been met. The next thing to think about in task response, should our letter be formal or informal? Well, this all depends on who you are writing to. If you're writing to a manager or a principal or a boss, or perhaps the editor of a local newspaper, or maybe a landlord, you should use formal language. Whereas if your letter is to a friend or a family member, or maybe a classmate, then you can use informal language. And an informal letter could include phrases like hi, hey, what's up? Whereas in a formal letter, we need to use more formal language such as hello, and make sure we start with dear. Formal language should not use contractions. So the word can't must be lengthened to cannot in a formal letter. Similarly, for informal writing, we can use I'm or we've, but in formal letters, I am and we have. You should end your formal letter with yours sincerely if you don't know the name of the person you're writing to. If you know their name and it's a formal letter, you can write yours faithfully. In an informal letter, you can finish the letter with something more friendly, such as best wishes, or hope to hear from you soon, or your friend. And the final thing, in a formal letter, put your full name. That's your family name and your given name. Whereas in an informal letter, you can just write your first name or even a nickname. If we look at our question again, we can see we're writing to the hotel manager. And this tells us that our letter must be formal. And finally, on task response, we need to make sure we answer every part of the question. So we must write a letter, but it must be a complaint letter. It doesn't tell us what we're complaining about. We can choose that ourselves, but it must be a complaint of some kind. And it says that we should do all three of these things. If you miss one of these, then you're not answering the question fully, and you'll lose marks on your task response. Now on to the main body of the letter. So first, you should introduce yourself and explain why you're writing. Then, give some background information, So here we're going to use the past tense and we're going to talk about what happened before the incident. Next, we're going to explain what happened. This is the reason why you're complaining. We're going to use examples, talk about our experience, and make sure the reason for our complaint is clear. Then, talk about your future expectations. What do you want the person you are writing to do next? How do you want them to deal with your complaint? So let's look at the first part, introducing yourself and explaining why you're writing. You could start by saying, I'm writing this letter because, and then explain why you're writing the letter. Or I'm writing this letter to complain about something. Or you might introduce yourself by saying, my name is Andrew and recently I stayed at your hotel. But I've decided to use the opening statement, it is with great anger and disappointment that I am writing this letter to you following a recent stay at your hotel. So from my opening statement, it's clear that I stayed at this hotel recently, and anger and disappointment shows that I'm unhappy about something, so this is obviously a complaint letter. I don't want to be saying something as obvious as, this is a complaint letter. We need to say it in a different way, express it in our own words. Next, we're going to give some background information. 2 weeks ago, I came to London on a business trip. It was my first time in the city, and of course I had no idea where to stay, so I looked on a popular travel website for some suggestions. Your hotel seemed reasonably priced, was in a good location for me, and most importantly, had numerous positive reviews. Based on all of this, I decided to book a room, a decision which I now sorely regret. The question said the word recently, so I've written 2 weeks ago. It doesn't tell us exactly when the stay was, just recently. So that could be yesterday, last week, a few weeks ago, a few months ago. Probably last year is too long ago to be classed as recently. So for a recent stay at a hotel, I think it needs to be within the last few months. Next, I've said I came to London. Now the question doesn't tell us where the hotel is, so we can make this up, we can choose somewhere, and I just decided to write London. This kind of specific detail makes the letter seem more realistic. Remember that we're writing an English language test, so I've chosen a city where English is the first language. Next, I've given my reason for going there, on a business trip. The question said I was travelling for business, so I'm just saying this in a slightly different way. The question also mentioned online reviews, so I've mentioned a popular travel website. We don't need to say which one specifically, but this is an important detail from the question that I'm including. And I'm also mentioning the positive reviews that I read on the website as one of the main reasons why I booked this hotel. Next, we're going to explain what happened. Now, the question doesn't tell us what happened. It just says we encountered several problems. Now, we can have some fun here. We can make up these problems. It could be anything at all. The word several is important though, so it's not just one problem. There needs to be more than one. So for this, you can use your imagination. Maybe you did stay in a hotel once and had some problems, so you can think about your own experience. Or maybe you've seen a TV show or a movie that can give you some inspiration on problems that might happen in a hotel, but now we have the freedom to write whatever we want. I've chosen to write about 3 different problems. Number 1. The problem started as soon as I arrived. The lady on reception couldn't find my booking, but instead of trying to work out what had happened, she accused me of making a mistake. I found her demeanour rude and unhelpful. So the first problem, rude staff at reception, combined with a problem with the booking. The next issue was with the room itself. There was a dripping tap and an odd smell in the bathroom. I asked to be moved to a different room, only to be told that there were none available. So here we have a problem with the room that I've invented. 2 problems, in fact, in the bathroom. So there was a tap which was dripping, water dropping out of the tap, and also a bad smell. I tried to fix the problem myself by being moved, but that wasn't possible. Finally, although the location was handy for my meeting, it was close to a nightclub which played loud music until the early hours, and as the windows lacked adequate soundproofing, I couldn't get to sleep until it had stopped. So another problem is excessive noise, meaning that I couldn't get to sleep. At this stage I must say that none of this is true. I've never had any of these problems in a hotel, I'm just making it up. And the last part of the body of the letter, talk about your future expectations. This is going to be a bit like a conclusion in an essay, but also explain what I want the hotel to do about my problem. Overall, I'd say that your hotel is way below the standards I would expect. I would not recommend your hotel to anyone. Furthermore, I demand a full refund for the night, as the hotel did not match the description on the website. This phrase, I demand a full refund, that means I want my money back, but I'm not asking nicely, I'm demanding. I'm saying this must be done. When you're thinking about what to write in the body of the letter, remember these 5 W's and an H. Who, where, when, why, what and how. In your planning time, it's a good idea to write out this spider diagram and make short notes beside each question. So who are you writing to? Where is the hotel located? When did you stay there? Why did you go there? Why are you complaining? What happened? What do you want the manager to do? And how? How did you try and deal with the problem? And then we have our yours sincerely and our full name at the end. And that completes our letter. Date in the top right hand corner. Dear Sir or Madam. Introduction as to why I'm writing. Background on why I was staying at the hotel. A detailed description of the problems and what happened while I was there. And at the end, my expectations for what I want the manager to do in the future. Now this letter is actually 274 words, so it's more than long enough. You don't need to write this much, I'm just showing you this as an example. But if you do write 274 words, that's absolutely fine, as long as it's not less than 150 words. So in my letter, for task response, I feel like I've answered every part of the question and that my writing looks like a letter. I've also avoided informal language as the letter is to a manager. For coherence and cohesion, I feel like my letter flows in a logical order. I've explained the background, then I've talked about the problems I experienced with my expectations for the future at the end. Next, Lexical Resource. Let's have a look at some of the vocabulary I've used. I've highlighted some of the better vocabulary words that I've used. Words like disappointment, reasonable, location, numerous, sorely, reception, demeanour, dripping, available, adequate, soundproofing, standards, demand, and refund. Not only are these high-level words, but they've also been used in the correct way and they're spelled correctly, all of which can improve your score for Lexical Resource. And finally, grammatical range and accuracy. I've used a range of verb tenses. For example, the introduction is in the present and continuous tense because I'm angry and disappointed right now and I'm writing the letter right now. But then in my description of what happened, I'm using the past tense. These events happened 2 weeks ago, so it's in the past. So here we can see a range of verbs that I've used in the past tense because all of this happened in the past. And I've tried to use a range of simple sentences and complex sentences. Here we can see the blue sentence is very simple. It's good to start off a paragraph with a simple sentence leading into the next point. And the pink sentence is a more complex sentence with 3 different clauses together there. Your writing should include a mixture of simple and complex sentences. And that concludes my demonstration of how to write a letter. As I said, this is 274 words, and I would expect this to score around 8.5 on the IELTS test. Possibly 8, as the marking is subjective, but for the reasons previously mentioned, I'm sure it would get a high score. Well, thank you for watching this video. If you are writing a letter for an English proficiency test, Hopefully you found this interesting and helpful. Remember to like the video, subscribe to the channel, and watch my other videos for more help on learning English. That's all for now. Goodbye.